We truly do live in a very high-paced, fast-paced world. I mean, just look back in the last 10, 20 years, how much has changed, how much our lives have changed, how so many terms and definitions that exist today didn't even exist maybe 10 years ago. So in a way, I think it's correct to say that we are ancient minds living in a modern world. And so in the same way as everything is changing around us, we need to make sure that the very source of our upbringing, of our education, changes with it. So a lot of people agree nowadays that we need to redefine school. But in order to redefine something, you need to know its very definition. So what is the definition of school? You see, the term is derived, like so many words, from ancient Greek. And in ancient Greek, there's a different connotation of what the term skole actually means. One is, as you may know it, a place of lecture and learning. This is how we use it most commonly. But the second definition is that skole is also sort of this love of knowledge which translates into philosophy. So the questioning part of things as well. And the third one, and this one's very interesting, this one is actually leisure. And now, I don't know what kind of school you experienced, but I definitely had part number one. I very rarely had part number two, where I was allowed to truly question and go in depth, but what was missing most, except for during the breaks of course, was leisure. And so we need to keep in mind that in order to redefine school, we actually need to know what the very basis, the very foundation of a school is. Leisure is definitely part of that. My name is Diego De Nicola, and I'm a philosopher, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an Ironman athlete, and most of all, I have 3 kids. And so seeing how they grow, how they learn, how they expand, and how they just, take in the whole world has made me think. Now, the idea to create this school started more than 10 years ago. And to give it just a little bit of an insight into my background, I've been very lucky and I've been very blessed to have wonderful parents that have pushed me always. I've been able to travel the world and live in different places, explore different cultures. I was lucky enough to actually learn 7 languages and to play, the guitar, the drums, to sing, to play soccer at a very high level. So there were a lot of things that I could do throughout my life, and still, I somehow thought, hey, there was always some component missing, because all of these things that I was doing happened outside of school. Or I would even say they happened despite school. And this shouldn't be the case. So why do I even set out to change the school system? Why do I think that it is necessary nowadays to create a new school? Bear with me, because I'd like to collect a few thoughts to guide you through the idea of what we want to do here at the School of Tomorrow, and also the source and why it even happened. First and foremost, in my experience in the last 7 years professionally, I've been able to work with CEOs, professional athletes, with small and big and large companies, with people from all walks of life. And the crazy thing was that so many of the things that we have worked on from a coaching perspective, from a mindset perspective, from a habits perspective, were things that they learned or they installed in their own being from when they were a child. And so I started wondering, why do we do so much work when we're older, when we're grown-ups, and try to sort of fix certain things that we could have simply installed from when we were little? And one of the things that hit me the most is how much our mindset is influenced by our school years. So it was really that the education that we got, which most of us got in some school, and don't get me wrong, I'm not criticizing school as a whole or the system as a whole, not at all. There's a lot of people that got a wonderful education out of that. All I want to say is that these years matter. And if you have kids, which you probably have if you're watching this video, or if you know other kids, then just look at how they develop. They're completely open, they're experimental, they want to know, they want to learn. And look at adults nowadays. I don't know what kind of adults you experience, but when I commute to my office or go to work or travel, I wish they were more like kids. And I'm always happy to see kids just, this joy of life, wherever you are, not having to act and stay within the boundaries that somehow our society has set. And so we need to find our way back to that. How do we do that? Well, first and foremost, we need to make sure that we create what we call a growth mindset. Because a growth mindset is the very foundation not only to become successful in life, which yes, it is important, and how you define success is truly up to you. It's not just a financial term. But most importantly, a growth mindset is essential to live a fulfilled life, to have wonderful relationships, to be able to really live the kind of life that you want. Because if you have the opposite, a fixed mindset, which very often is the result of the schooling system that we've had for so many years now, the problem is that you will run into problems very often. You will run into roadblocks. You won't know how to continue. And if you don't have the mindset to grow, it's very difficult that you can keep evolving. So that's one of the absolute main things that we want to teach. Because you see, one major thing that has changed nowadays in our schooling system is that school is no longer the source of wisdom. Back in the days, this was absolutely the case. I will never forget the story that my dad always told me. He was an immigrant from Italy, came to Switzerland, was trying very hard to learn the language, and he had to write down on a piece of paper the words that he didn't know, because once a week he got access for half an hour to the public library where he could go and look up the few words that he did not understand. Now, of course, he could ask some people, some friends, but it was difficult. He had nowhere to look them up. And this really struck me, and I will never forget this example, because nowadays, all of us, you and I, we're used to, if you don't know something, you Google it, you pick up your phone, there are so many possibilities. So the school has shifted from a source of knowledge into something new. And this something new is still being redefined. We're still struggling to find what this new school is, because you no longer go there to have someone tell you how things work, because let's be honest, look at the kids nowadays. As soon as they figure out how to work an iPad, a computer, or a phone, they will tell you what you're asking before you can even look that up. And so this has changed. So one major thing that has changed is the school is shifting from a source of wisdom, a source of knowledge, into something new which teaches us that we actually need to learn how to synthesize knowledge, how to sort through knowledge. And so what we want to do at the School of Tomorrow is, instead of teaching, which we also do, but it's not our main thing, instead of teaching, what we really want to do is promote learning. And this is very different, because promoting a learning environment creates a whole different atmosphere. So we're not really here to make kids grow. We are truly here to, we want to create the basis so that kids can prosper. We want to create the foundation. We want to foster all the possibilities so that kids can truly grow within the mindset that very often they already have, and we want to just make sure and implement that. What's very important in this whole culture is that we foster creativity. How do we do that? There are many elements, and I'm not going to go into detail here in this video, but one of the main things in order to foster creativity is that you need to remove the fear of failure. And this is not done by testing, by assessing, by punishing, by pointing out the mistakes. That's also the reason why in the School of Tomorrow, we don't do homeworks, we don't have exams, and we also firmly believe that grading is not a necessity at this stage. So why don't we give homework? Let me just very briefly go into that. We believe that the importance of family is absolutely essential. You don't just learn in school, you learn in life. And if you want to learn in life, you need to have family time. And even my personal belief is that there's nothing worse than a kid having been hours in school, coming home, the dad and the mom coming home from work from a busy day, and now what's supposed to be a couple hours of quality time before going to bed gets in a way stressed or ruined or even just influenced by the fact that you should do homework. And I know from a lot of families that this is one of the biggest stress factors that they have. So that's why we don't give homework. Of course, if a kid wants to do homework, he's always welcome to, and we'll support him and help him along the way. Why don't we do grading? Now, by not doing grading, we don't mean that it's not important what you do in school and if you're doing well or not, but we firmly believe that the capacity to self-assess is more important than learning to rely on outside assessments. And unfortunately, many of us adults nowadays, we've always learned that to every question there's an answer, and to every answer there's a right and wrong answer. So we go out into the real world after having been in school looking for these real right and wrong answers, which very often we don't find, especially if you're talking about habits, about relationships, about things you should do in life, decisions you should take, that's not something someone can tell you there's a right or wrong answer. So we get deformed in a way into believing this hypothesis which doesn't actually exist. And in that sense, yes, we do assess, we do self-assessments, we do make sure we set goals and we try to reach them, but we simply don't believe that you can put a number on effort, that you can put a number on skill, that you can put a number on the path that a kid has already taken to get to where he is. And we also don't believe that if the number is slightly under a certain arbitrary limit, this necessarily proves that something is not right. So that's why we don't want to do that. And finally, we believe also, and this goes with that, that we don't need grading because we don't need to create more stress. We would like to create a stress-free environment because we've realized this is the easiest way to learn. And since we're talking about easiest way of learning, the easiest way truly is when you have fun. The easiest way truly is when you're doing something you actually love doing. At the School of Tomorrow, we respect the Lehrplan 21 of the Zurich public school system. We make sure all the necessary basic skills from a public system get taught as well, but we do it differently. Because here's the thing, I can just tell you to learn something, or I can ask you what your interest is. If I find out what your interest is, then I can also discover how we can possibly package that into a path, a learning path, a project where you will automatically learn these skills without even realizing that. But then at the end, we don't do exams. Because that's also one of the things that we feel like if you're learning for an exam, you're not learning because you want to learn. And so this is a very important foundation. Now, on top of that, in order to do this, we need to stay flexible. We want to help the families. We want to be there for the families. We want to create an environment where your son, your daughter can come here and have the time of their lives, truly the time of their lives, and without realizing they're learning, or they realize they're learning, but their connotation of learning is very different from what we adults very often see. Because I see a lot of friends and family and relatives, and when you ask them to learn something, right away we say, oh, learning, that's tough. Learning is hard. But it doesn't have to be like that, because learning can be fun. Learning can be leisure. And that's exactly what we aim at. So for this reason, we create an individual curriculum for every single child. We make sure we create a relationship with every single one so we understand them, we truly understand them, and we can create what we call personalized education. So we create a learning path for each and every one. And this is very different. And of course, in order to do that, we need total flexibility. Now, we also would like to give families total flexibility, and for that reason we have very flexible times. We have flexible vacations. You can take vacation when you need them, when you want them as a family. Of course, there's a certain limit, but this is all up to you. Even the times, whether you drop them off early in the morning or a bit later, this is also up to you. Some kids, they need to wake up for a couple hours first before they are ready. And in order to do this, we rely on one of our absolute strengths. And this is a community that we have. We have a community of experts in every possible imaginable field, which is growing and expanding. From artists to musicians to athletes to business leaders to any kind of area that you can think and imagine, which come in, some more regularly, some every once in a while. And so the kids can learn directly from the experts. We do have teachers. We also have mentors that work very closely with the kids. And the kids can choose who to work with, truly. But we also have experts that come in and talk about their field of knowledge. So you will learn directly from the best of the best in the business. Now, in order to do so, of course, we're embarking on a journey with a lot of unknowns. We're embarking on a journey where, every class, every combination, every little society that we have within our school changes and alters. So we want to break down the barriers. We don't want to be a bubble. We want to learn in the real world. So whenever possible, when we want to learn something, when we want to create something, we try to do this in the real world. That's why we're located so centrally, so that we can go outside. The idea is not to learn in theory how things work, but to actually do them, to innovate, to create things right away, right then and there. And of course, in order to do that, we need to keep one of the most important elements for kids as well as for us adults. And that's the will to question and the will to experiment. Because you see, every change, every evolution has always started with a question. And no invention can ever see the light of day if at some point someone didn't decide to actually go out and experiment. So we want to make sure that kids at the school of tomorrow, they develop a personality. They develop key social skills. They develop all of these personal skills that will serve them for a lifetime. And we'll make sure that they will keep questioning, that they will keep the curiosity that every single child is born with, and we'll make sure that we can keep experimenting. So us as a school, we need to do the same thing. We don't have a fixed structure that we stick to all the time, but we make sure that we can keep experimenting, that we can reinvent ourselves, that we can also question what we are doing. And us, as teachers, as mentors, as experts, we also keep learning and growing. And that's the reason why we call it the School of Tomorrow. Because it is today that we prepare for tomorrow. It is today that we do the things that we need to do so that tomorrow will not be something we're a victim of, but we're the artifacts of our future. We can create the things that we want to see in our world. And in order to do this, we need to keep questioning, we need to keep experimenting.